Guys, welcome back to another week of Connect with Jonathan Mark. This week's episode is really a special one. We're going to be joined by a podcast legend, my close friend, Kate Casey. And we're going to be talking about a couple of cases. One of the cases, and one that you guys really love, is the Delphi murders. But we're going to be giving you updates on the Suzanne Simpson case. I want you to go back to last week's episode when I speak to Chandler, Suzanne's daughter, and I want you to listen to all the stuff that just uncovered. It's been a wild week, but Kate and I go through everything. And it's also funny because Kate knows people there, and she will be telling you her experience about talking about with the locals there. And guys, please do not forget, we have all the numbers, the Texas Rangers, the Almost Park Police, and do not forget the meal train link that's in the show notes. It really helps out the family. They have no resources right now. We can all help them. We are a fantastic community. But I want to tell you guys how I met Kate, because I don't think some of you guys even know how this story even happened. Years back, I think during COVID, like the first month of COVID, I was going on the Jenny McCarthy show, and I got tagged in a post about promos, and Kate Casey was on that post. We reached out to each other to get a reading. Like literally the next day we were scheduling a reading. And if you guys know Kate Casey, she is straight to the point and wants it done immediately. So what did we do? I sat down, we did a reading, and she literally became, an older sister to me, one of my closest friends in the world. But with that all being said, I need you guys to stick around to the end. I do a little bit of a reading for the Delphi murders, and I think they might have something wrong. I think they're missing something. Stick around. So this past week, we just interviewed Suzanne Simpson. Her daughter, Chandler, came on because her mom just unfortunately got murdered and she went missing. So Chandler came and she wanted some answers of where the mom could be and, some turning points in a case. So weirdly enough, we do the reading on a Tuesday and the recording on a Tuesday. And then that Thursday, Chandler's father got convicted of the murder. Now, obviously, people probably that know me know that I probably tell you everything. Like literally everything. The moment that happened, I called you and I was just like, have you heard about this case? And in Kate Casey fashion, which I hope people know this, she goes on a deep dive and then finds someone who lives a block over from her, who knows this person. And I'm like, in Kate Casey fashion, you literally know everyone. Like you are separated by one person potentially. That's kind of what happened. I want you to tell people kind of like what you texted me and then called me. And then the moment that you said to me, someone who lives a block over and that knows Suzanne, I was like, of course you do. I'm like, of course you do.
I know. Well, sometimes it surprises me. I feel like you guys are not surprised whenever I say, so I actually found somebody who knows this person, but I really was. I had never heard of the town Almost Park before. And then I'd remembered that I had a friend who lived just a couple streets over from me who moved from my town to San Antonio. And so I wrote her and asked her if she was, I actually said, I have a friend who works on true crime cases and is working on an episode about a murder that seems to have been in your area. Are you familiar with it? And she said, actually, the family lived one street over. So that's the weird part. If anyone's unfamiliar with this case, as I was, here's the backstory. Suzanne Simpson disappears on the night of October 6th. She's last seen outside of her home in the suburb of Almost Park. She's reported missing the next day. This city is in Bexar County. It's about 4 miles north of downtown San Antonio. A neighbor reported seeing an argument between Suzanne and her husband, Brad, which became physical after they returned from a party near their home the night that she was last seen. The neighbor reported hearing 2 or 3 screams a short time later, as a detective wrote in the affidavit. So this week, Brad Chandler Simpson was arrested for the murder of his wife. The arrest warrant charging him has been unsealed by a Bexar County judge and made public, and it paints this detailed picture of the husband's suspicious movements in the hours and days after she disappeared, which ultimately led investigators to charge him with murder without finding the wife's body. So the officials have confirmed that he would then report his wife missing about an hour after the family friend. At the time, he said he was alerted to her disappearance when the school of the couple's 5-year-old daughter reported that she had failed to pick the child up on the afternoon of October 7th, so the next day. This was something that she regularly did, and so of course it raised eyebrows. Surveillance footage obtained by investigators shows that he dropped off their daughter that Monday morning, which also raised red flags for the detectives. This was something that he did not do regularly. Further, he originally told investigators that he saw his wife in a separate room in their home, but he later switched up his story and said he hadn't seen her since the previous night. So investigators still don't know what happened to Suzanne's cell phone. He told investigators that she lost it on the night of this party, but a search warrant ultimately revealed the husband had cut service to his wife's device the night of their dispute. Further, the warrant says that he told a family friend that he took her phone. So quite a bit of mystery in this case. And again, how strange that this mother, this very well-loved mother in this suburb of San Antonio happens to live one street over from my friend.
It's actually insane. And you know what's interesting is a lot of the stuff that, I spoke about with Chandler, Suzanne's daughter, when I was doing the reading, now that more stuff is, I think, public to everyone, it was coming out in real time. So like Chandler was like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And there were some things that, even myself, when I was sitting there doing the reading, I was like a little confused by. And one of the things you just mentioned that she was also mentioning, which I don't know, like I was like, is this important? Is this not important? Right? She said to me, she was like, my father never drove my sibling to school. Never. And she's like, one day he said, oh my God, you can sleep late. And she's like, that has never been said from him ever. She's like, ever. But that one day, she's like, don't worry, sleep late. I'll take them to school and pick them up from school. And I'm like, I don't know, maybe that could be something. I'm like, I don't know. It could be like odd behavior. But then as all this other stuff started coming out in the reading, I was like, all right, this makes more sense. Like we were talking about blueprints with code on it that I was like seeing and helping like decipher some of that stuff. It was really, really interesting that the business partner was giving to her father. And I think a huge thing that they're not adding into that bio is that the business partner is also being investigated heavily.
He clearly seems to be somebody who is a secret keeper. Seems to be somebody who practiced coercive control in his home. His family seems to be terrified of him. Mm-hmm. And I believe I also read somewhere that she had said to an attorney or to a doctor, someone in her own community had said, if I go missing, you'll find me in the lake. So there seems to have been something happening in the last few days, if not weeks, that led her to believe that she was, it seems like in the last couple of weeks, if not months of her life, she had reason to believe her life was in immediate danger.
So this also came out recently too, that I think there was domestic charges like years ago brought out from Brad to Suzanne, like in 2020 maybe or something, or in 2022. And what I found also interesting with the reading was we were doing it and then I kept seeing blueprints, right? Because he's in real estate and I just kept seeing blueprints and stuff. And she kept saying there's something VH66. She kept saying that when he was in jail, the business partner was sending stuff, but on real estate blueprint, and it kept saying VH66. What we think it probably means is VH is, so the business partner is James Val Cotter. This is all public. Like this is all public now. They called him Val. So Val's house, and 66 is the caliber that which again is public, Brad asked him to hide. So an AK in the 66 caliber. So he kept handing blueprints saying it's like basically saying the guns at VH66, Val's house, 66 caliber. And a lot of the other things too is like when the police finally got the warrant, they were basically like going into the home and seeing holes in the wall, like giant holes that he was like pushing her into. So he was slamming her around.
So you're meaning to tell me that this horrific man, this horrible man, had been abusing her and had left holes in the wall where he had been physical with her?
Well, that Friday, right? So like the night that she went missing, or the night that she went missing, whatever, they got into a huge dispute. And, now people are stepping up kind of and saying that they heard like fights and stuff. So he did this horrible thing and then he left. And then he didn't like spackle or didn't put drywall up. He left the holes there. So it looked like he took someone and just like slammed them into a wall.
How bold are you as an abuser that you would do that? Your wife would go missing after you've clearly murdered her, and you don't even go to the length of trying to cover it up. He clearly believes he'll never be caught. I mean, at this point, he's 53 years old, so he's probably gotten away with it for so long that he doesn't think any charges would ever be brought against him.
But like to me, it's like, how bold are you to do this and then leave and then go to your lake house or your river house? Like, how bold are you to do that? You have several kids that are home.
So his wife is missing.
Yeah.
He goes to the lake house. The children are left behind in the home where their mother was last seen. And we now understand from authorities that there is evidence of a scuffle in the home, including holes in the walls.
Yeah. And it's funny because I said to her in the reading, I was like, some of the problems that people have shouldn't be outside, right? Like if you're fighting with a significant other, arguing, let's say, not physical, sometimes you want to do behind closed doors because you don't want people to see that you're arguing, fighting, whatever. But I was like, when they were fighting, the people around them heard it. It wasn't like people were unaware about it. And I said, that's the problem that I saw, was people are not speaking up. Like people know more, but they're not speaking up because they're like trying to protect one another and also protect. I think where they come from is very like generational families, and like everything needs to be squeaky clean, country club, whatever. And they're all trying to protect each other. And she basically said that is essentially what is going on, which is why it's becoming more of like an issue.
Well, I will say this though. I once had a neighbor who was clearly very abusive to the girlfriends that he had, multiple girlfriends. And there was one evening where things got too far and I ended up having to call the police. And I was home alone with a baby. And the police officer that came said to me, you have to be very careful about what you do, because in domestic violence situations, it could turn around and impact you. And that's a very scary thing. So if you live in their community, you may be fearful if you say anything that you could be on the receiving end of some retaliation. And if you have young children or you have a business, it could be terrifying to feel like if you speak up, you could put other people, including yourself, in danger.
No, and I 100% agree with that. I just think, and this is what I saw, which is why I said it to her, was this fight was like loud. Like this wasn't all domestic violence is horrible. I don't care like which way it really is. But what I saw was like you heard the slamming, things like you heard stuff. So even at that point, like you could think someone's robbing someone at that point. Like you don't know the difference if you're just hearing slamming, things breaking and stuff. You have no idea.
But isn't this a community where they have their own kind of security force? I think that complicates things too.
Yeah, they have their own police. Yeah.
Yeah, that could further complicate it, because maybe that police force feels like they can handle it and could be overwhelming. There could be jurisdiction issues.
Could be. I do know that the private police is saying that they've never faced anything like this. Like this has been like a whirlwind of them.
Well, that's similar to the Martha Moxley case of 1975, which was covered in the book A Season of Purgatory by Dominic Dunn, and became a case that has been long discussed, involving a member of the Skakel family who are in relation to the Kennedys. And you've got a young girl who's found in the backyard of her own home. And because there was a local, like kind of task force, police force it impeded the investigation to some degree. So I don't think this is completely unusual in some wealthy communities. And if anything, I think it would be serving as a cautionary tale that if you don't have the wherewithal to conduct an investigation, you need to call in reinforcements.
Which is what they did. I'm pretty sure they called in the Texas Rangers. I'm pretty sure they are doing everything they can, because another thing as well is he was putting them on a wild goose chase too. He was like kind of messing with them, just what I feel he was doing. Because when he was like talking and saying things, and even how small it was, when he took that phone and you said the service was cut, right?
Hmm.
Someone took that phone and put it in a landfill and pinged near that landfill. So essentially, what he was doing is having them go to this landfill and search, right? Like just search and expend resources and time, like to try and find her. And they didn't. They spent like 2.5 weeks and they found literally nothing, absolutely nothing. But the
Mm.
phone was there and the phone was pinged there that night. So what I was kind of thinking was like someone else went there, or he went there, pinged the phone there, and then turned it off. Because it's like they spent like 2.5 weeks looking for nothing, absolutely
Very
nothing.
frustrating.
Yeah, and like for like going back to your point, like for a private town police, that's a long time. That's like
Hmm.
all their resources. That's a long time. Like they don't have what like an NYPD has, an LAPD has, with like different like departments of like canine and like SWAT or ESU,
Yeah.
and all
Forensic
this
materials.
forensics
Right.
teams and like specific teams to this. They have their, like I have this on Long Island. There's like the Hamptons house their own police. Ashrow can buy me. Like there's certain places that have their own police, and they're like in their precinct. There's probably like 20 people, 22 people, because they're in an area that's like pretty upscale, that they don't need a lot of patrol on there. So like that's what I saw too. And like when she was confirming a lot of it, I was like, this guy is dumb, but not that dumb. He's definitely
Right.
stupid. He's not that smart to get away with it, because he's sending encrypted messages when he's in jail. He's not trying to hide anything. So I was like a little fascinated by this case and how it even got brought to me. Like, and obviously, and everyone knows too, I thought was interesting too. It wasn't even supposed to be Chandler. It wasn't even supposed to be her. And that's like the craziest part. It was supposed to be Suzanne's best friend.
Hmm. Well, sometimes I think that the right person gets the opportunity at the right time. She certainly wanted to make sure that there were details that were made available to you, and I'm grateful that that happened.
Yeah, I am too. It was just like so heavy. And like, what's so interesting too is people are now coming forward. They're like emailing me things about this area, about how they want to help. And like that's what I was trying to tell Chandler privately also, is like people are going to want to help you. You're not going to have to do this
Mhm.
alone. People are going to want to help you. So,
Well, it sounds like that's a direct result of the mother that she was. She
yep.
seemed to have been somebody that was well loved and very helpful. I know that she helped my friend with her daughter in college, and so I hope in all of these stories that we don't forget that this was a very real person who lived a very impactful life, and she leaves behind children who very much miss her, and this is going to be a gaping hole in their lives.
I think you said it perfectly too. Real people, it's a real situation. I think people sometimes have to separate at times documentaries and movies and real life.
Yeah. What a story. Well, I hope that it continues to unfold, and I'm grateful that you were able to help in some way. And my condolences to the family. And it is one of those cases where the more that you hear about the victim, the more you're kind of. I find myself, and what I do often is I almost feel like I'm mourning the person that I never got to meet.
Right.
Like I hear so much about a victim and who they were in this life, and I feel kind of let down that I never got to know who they were.
And that's kind of like, I think the beautiful side of what I do, even though like sometimes it can be so hectic, is I get to see their personality and who they are. Even though they're not physically here, I get to kind of see the best version of themselves when they come through. So it still hurts, and like I feel Chandler's pain and their family's pain, but it's also for me, I'm happy I'm able to see the best version of her mom being just happy in a really hectic situation, and to be able to pass those messages to me was like a home run for me, just
Yeah.
to see like some type of hope. And then even when she was reaching out after, it was really positive. So it was awesome.
Well, the next case that I wanted to ask you too about is years ago, we talked about a case involving 2 little girls that were murdered. And a lot of people I know on my show have circled back about those episodes and asked me what you think, because there has been a verdict. So this is the case involving 2 young girls, and Richard Allen was found guilty of 2 counts of murder and 2 counts of felony murder in this highly publicized Delphi murder trial. The prosecutor said that he had killed 13-year-old Abigail Abby Williams and 14-year-old Libby German in 2017, that he had cut their throats and left their bodies near a trail in Delphi, Indiana. The case went cold for more than 5 years until Richard Allen was arrested in 2022. Now, when the guilty verdict was read, he sat emotionless. He could be sentenced up to 130 years in prison. There was a 12-person jury. They had been sequestered during the trial, and they began deliberating after 17 days of testimony. So they got to see graphic photos of the bodies, and they also saw this video in which captured the final moments of the girls' lives. There was a man that was walking towards them, and he instructed them to go down the hill. That is something that we've seen in images, since 2017, haunting images. Now, in addition to this, there's apparently a recording of Richard Allen purportedly confessing to his wife during a phone call from prison. Reportedly, he said, "I did it. I killed Abby and Libby." But the defense attorney said in the closing arguments that there was a broken timeline, it was a false confession, and that there was a lack of DNA or weapons evidence that should lead to acquittal. It should be noted that he was in solitary confinement for many months, and we know now what that can do to a person.
Yeah.
The defense further argued that there, again, was no physical evidence tying him to the killings, and said confessions that he made in the past were false and stem from, again, being in solitary confinement for months as his mental health deteriorated. So again, this case goes back to February 13th of 2017, when Abby and Libby went for a hike in Indiana. The 2 girls were reported missing after they failed to meet Libby's father that afternoon. And then the next day, their bodies were found both dead from cuts to the throat, and they were partially covered by sticks. So what people have really been pushing me to ask you is whether or not they got the wrong guy.
So for me, what I see, I think there's another person there, another person that's involved. It's kind of like if someone commits a horrible crime, kind of like we just spoke about, and someone else was there, helps, involved, aided, whatever the case is, are they still in trouble? 100% yes. Did they actually do it? It's like maybe they didn't pull the trigger or use the knife, but they were there. Yeah, I think they have the right person to a degree. I don't think he's the only one. No, I don't.
So what you're saying is, and I remember you saying this before when I've asked you previously, that there seem to have been 2 people.
Yeah.
Because what it looks like is that there was a murder, and then someone returned to the crime scene. It looks as if I remember correctly, their clothes were switched, like the wrong clothes were put on the girls. And then their bodies were covered in sticks. So you're saying there was somebody who did the act of the killing, but there was somebody who else was either present and or helped in the cover up or the moving of the bodies.
Yeah, because what I also see too is like the actual murder of it is pretty horrific.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like and yes, I know a man can do that to a woman, or a woman can do that to a man if it, like, the circumstances are like they're surprising them. But this seems like it was really intense, like a very intense killing that I don't know. I just see 2
people.
I just see 2 people.
The other person, are police tracking that person? Do they have any idea that there may be, or did they just not have enough evidence to bring charges against that person or anyone.
Just looks like they don't have enough evidence. It looks like they have an idea. Like, I'm not going to lie. Like, it does look like they have an idea of like who it could potentially be. But it also looks like they don't have enough evidence to prove it.
So what I hear and what I'm concerned with is, well, first of all, I'm grateful. You're telling me that Richard Allen should be convicted of the murder. But what I'm also hearing is that there's potentially somebody else who had a part in this crime, who's walking the streets and is capable of committing another crime. Can you tell when you tap into this that the person who never had charges brought against them is a potential danger to the community?
Yeah, I mean, they're always going to be a threat, right? Like, they did something pretty horrible, but I don't see them doing anything like that again.
And why didn't Richard Allen, do you think, bring this other person up?
Probably because, like, he's in jail. He was in solitary, protecting people. You could protect people. Like, I see it all the time. People will make false confessions. I mean, we literally just did a recording of an Unsolved in a state, and someone gave a false confession, like, to protect someone.
Yeah.
If like that happens way more, and this case is not even national at all that we did. Someone came in, they were, whether drinking, drugs, whatever, but they made a false confession. They took the blame until they realized that this person was not mentally sane and was just making a false confession.
You know what I also think about too is the members of that jury. They were unfortunately given the task. 12 people in that courtroom were given the task of looking at very graphic pictures of two little girls that were killed in the most horrific way. And I'm grateful that we have a system of justice where we can have juries. But I also think about the lasting impact, the emotional impact of an experience of sitting on a jury like that. And I just want to say how I'm also thinking of not just the family of these two sweet girls, but also the people who were involved in this case, the judge, the members of the jury who have had to look through very difficult pieces of evidence and how that may forever shape the rest of their life.
And and I also want to piggyback off that and saying I also send my love to every one of the jurors there. I mean, like, I agree. I can't imagine you're looking at these pictures, analyzing these horrible pictures for weeks at a time, and you have to like really analyze everything. And you're looking at probably one of the most horrific things. So I can't imagine them being okay. And I want to send my love to them because it's just not an easy thing. Like, looking at a murder of a young girl is horrific. Like, the worst thing. Absolute worst thing.
Worst thing.
Well, I just want to say thank you for finally coming on my show. I'm so happy that you're here. Seriously, I feel like it's about time. You know, you're the one, and I want to say this, you're the one who pushed me to do this. I don't know anyone else that did. You're the one who pushed me to do this.
Yeah, it was annoying. I was like, when are you going to start a podcast? You're like, shut up.
I was, yeah, no, you were not annoying. You were just looking out for me. And for you telling me to dive into also the crime stuff, no one else told me to do that.
I will say that. I remember the first time you did a reading with me. We had just been on the Jenny McCarthy show years ago.
Like
and I do remember saying, well, you should just be doing true crime.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, I didn't, obviously, until like I started coming out and started doing it more and telling people about more. But you were the reason why. And I just want to give all the credit to you. And, you know, your show shaped me into doing this and to everything. And I owe so much and to you. So I just want to say thank you.
Right back at you.
Hey, thank you so much for coming on. And it's such a nice little turn of events for you to be on my show. But again, guys, if you want to hear anything that she has to say, and trust me, you're going to want to. She interviews everyone. Go listen to her podcast, Reality Life with Kay Casey. And please remember to listen to last week's episode with Suzanne Simpson, the missing Texas mom. We talk to Chandler, which is Suzanne's daughter. Please remember that all the numbers for the police will be listed in the show notes. And the meal train link will also be linked there as well. And do not forget to send emails to connect@jonathanmark@gmail.com. We've been receiving them. You guys have been so helpful. And trust me, we're passing them along to Chandler and her family. Don't forget to follow my Instagram @JonathanMarkMedium and continue to send me DMs, questions, everything. We're receiving them, we're reading them, and it's going to be on the show. So stay tuned for that. All right, guys, I'll see you next week. And don't forget to rate and review the show. Have a good one.